If you've flown economy recently, you already know what this video is about. Your knees are pressed against the seat in front of you. Your elbows are fighting for the armrest. But while the back of the plane keeps getting tighter, the front of the plane has turned into something completely different. Private suites with closing doors, lie-flat beds. Emirates has showers. Some airlines are building actual rooms up there. And those two things, the shrinking seat in row 28 and the private suite in row 3, they're not separate trends. They're the same business decision. And once you understand why, the way you think about your ticket kind of changes. So let's start with the numbers, because the change is real, it's measurable, and it happened pretty fast. Back in the 1980s, US economy cabins offered roughly 31 to 35 inches of pitch. Pitch is just the distance from your seat back to the seat back in front of you. Most airlines were around 33 or 34. Today, major US carriers cluster around 30 to 32. And ultra-low-cost airlines like Spirit and Frontier go as low as 28. Seat width dropped too. Used to be around 18 inches across. A lot of airlines today sit at about 17, some a little less. An inch doesn't sound like much until you're sitting in it for 4 hours next to somebody who's also lost an inch. And those lost inches add up for the airline. By making seats a little thinner and shaving off some pitch, they could fit an extra row into the same airplane. One extra row on a 737 is 6 more passengers per flight. Multiply that by 5 or 6 flights a day, 365 days a year, across hundreds of planes, millions of dollars in new revenue from space that didn't exist before. There's also this detail that's kind of hard to shake. Consumer advocates and human factors groups have pointed out that most economy seats today are designed around a body that's 5'10" and under 180 pounds. Those are measurements from the early 1960s. The average American man today weighs about 200 pounds, roughly 24 pounds more than the early 60s average. So the seat was built for a body size that's well below today's average passenger. So the easy answer is airlines got greedy and crammed more seats in. But that's not really what happened. I mean, yeah, seats got smaller, but the reason is more interesting than just greed. It actually goes back to 1978. That's when the US passed the Airline Deregulation Act, which removed the government controls on airline prices and routes. Before that, fares were basically set by regulators. Airlines competed on service instead: food, legroom, how nice the experience was. After deregulation, airlines could finally compete on price. And through the 80s and 90s, the legacy carriers still leaned heavily on service. They thought that's what passengers wanted. Then, new low-fare carriers proved them wrong. Southwest had already been around since the late 60s in the US. Ryanair adopted the same playbook in Europe. Later, you got EasyJet, Wizz Air, AirAsia, and eventually the ultra-low-cost carriers like Spirit and Frontier in the US. Their model was simple: strip everything out, charge for extras, keep the base fare as low as possible. And when customers had that choice, most of them, especially price-sensitive travelers, picked the cheaper option most of the time. Even if the cheaper option had less legroom, no food, and fees for everything. Legacy airlines, Delta, United, American, had a choice of their own. Keep offering a nicer product at higher prices and watch passengers leave for the budget carriers. Or strip economy down, match the low fares, and find other ways to make money. Almost every major carrier in the US and Europe picked the second option. An economy class went from being a product airlines were proud of to something that just needed to be cheap enough to fill. But if economy got worse, where did all the investment go? The front of the plane. While economy was losing 2 or 3 inches of legroom, business class went from a slightly wider seat to a fully enclosed private suite with a bed, a door that closes, and in some cases, its own wardrobe. Emirates has showers in first class on their A380s. Etihad built something called the Residence on their A380s, a 3-room suite with a living room, a bedroom with a double bed, and a private bathroom with a shower. And the economics behind this are kind of wild. A basic economy seat costs the airline on the order of a few $1,000s, usually in the $4,000 to $10,000 range depending on the design. A high-end, lie-flat business or first-class suite can run $60,000 to $100,000 per seat. The hardware at the front costs roughly 10 to 20 times more than the hardware at the back. And a business class ticket on a transatlantic route sells for 4 to 6 times the price of an economy ticket on the same flight. On many long-haul routes, airlines say premium cabins are what tip the flight into profit. And the scale of this shift is kind of hard to believe. In the fourth quarter of 2025, Delta's premium cabin revenue overtook their economy revenue for the first time in the airline's 100-year history. Premium, that's first class, business, premium select, comfort plus, brought in $5.7 billion. Main cabin brought in 5.6. That's the entire rest of the plane combined, losing to the seats at the front. And Delta's CEO said something else that's pretty revealing. Over 95% of Delta's revenue now comes from households earning $100,000 or more a year. If you're wondering why the airline isn't investing in your economy seat, that's why. The customer they care about isn't sitting in it. And premium economy, the cabin between regular economy and business, has quietly become one of the most profitable sections of the plane per square foot. It takes modestly more space than economy, but sells for 1.5 to 3 times the fare, which is why every major airline has been adding more of it and shrinking the main cabin to make room. After the pandemic, this whole shift accelerated. People who used to fly economy started booking premium economy. People who flew premium economy moved to business. Airlines saw demand at the front of the plane like they'd never seen before. And they responded by adding more premium seats and squeezing economy harder to make room. And there's another layer to all of this. Airlines didn't just make economy seats smaller, they turned the discomfort itself into a product. Think about how many tiers exist now on a single flight. Basic economy, regular economy, economy with extra legroom, premium economy, business, first. 6 different prices for seats on the same airplane. Basic economy is a relatively recent invention. Delta launched it in 2012, and the other U.S. legacy carriers followed over the next few years. The Senate Commerce Committee has explicitly said airlines describe basic economy as a way to, quote, monetize consumers by upselling them to regular economy. In other words, it's designed to be the thing you upgrade from. The restrictions are the whole point. No advanced seat selection, last boarding group, tighter change fees, and on some airlines on certain routes, you can't even use the overhead bin. Each restriction is a reason to pay a little more, and every step up from basic economy has its own fee. Want to pick your seat? $10 to $20. Want an exit row? $40. Want premium economy? $80. Want to check a bag? $30 each way. None of these things used to cost extra. They were just part of flying. And add-on revenue has gotten huge. Frontier reported that about 62% of revenue per passenger now comes from ancillaries, meaning the fees outsize the base fare on a per-passenger basis. That's not just extra legroom and checked bags, though. Ancillaries also include credit card partnerships, loyalty program revenue, onboard sales, a whole ecosystem built around the flight itself. So economy shrinks, and then you're offered ways to buy your way out of the discomfort. Enough people do that, it's become one of the most profitable parts of the business. Some have tried to push this even further. An Italian seat manufacturer called Aviointeriors designed a prototype called the Skyrider, a semi-standing saddle seat with pitch as low as 23 inches, claiming up to 20% more capacity. Ryanair's CEO publicly talked about selling standing room tickets at one point. No civil aviation regulator has ever certified a standing seat, and current safety standards make it extremely unlikely in the near term. But the fact that anyone was seriously considering it tells you where the incentives point. So you'd think at some point a regulator would step in and say, okay, there has to be a minimum. Congress actually tried. In 2018, they passed a law telling the FAA to set any minimum seat dimensions, pitch and width, that are necessary for passenger safety. The concern was evacuation. If seats are too tight, can passengers actually get out of the airplane in 90 seconds during an emergency? That's the FAA requirement, full evacuation in a minute and a half. As of now, there still aren't any minimums. So far, the FAA has concluded that existing data don't require new minimums. And in 2023, a federal court ruled that consumer advocates hadn't shown that smaller seats create a clear safety problem that would legally require the FAA to act. But the FAA's evacuation tests have been controversial. Critics argue the tests use mostly healthy adult volunteers under idealized conditions. No smoke, no darkness, no full overhead bins, no families with small children. Senator Tammy Duckworth has pushed for more realistic evacuation testing that includes people with disabilities, older passengers, and kids. The National Academies is currently peer-reviewing the FAA's research, which might change things, but so far, nothing's changed. So for now, seat size is up to the airline. No federal minimum for legroom, no federal minimum for seat width. And as long as airlines pass an evacuation test under idealized conditions, there's no regulatory pressure tied directly to seat size.